to another episode of Sync Res. Charles Levan, LA-based sync agent. Want to welcome to the studio very special guest, LA-based composer and film producer Brian Ralston. Brian, how's it going? Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Doing good. We got a little June gloom here, and
I like it though.
I would agree. It's nice change.
Yeah, it's still sunny a little bit, but I don't. I like the colder temperature.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. It burns off a little bit in the afternoon, and then we can enjoy the sun. But Brian, what a time to be working in the industry. Every day we wake up. I was attending a UK Sync Summit the other day on a panel, and the typical lament everyone, for those with gray in our hair and veterans of the industry, is, how's work? Are things picking up for you?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I mean, I think the entertainment industry is hard for anyone, even when it's working, right? So you add another layer of what we've been through with COVID and then strikes, and then the industry adjusting to all of that and figuring out how to do new models and how to work remotely. And it's just, I think everybody's going through a huge transition right now. So how's it going for you is kind of a, I don't think anyone really knows how to answer that question right now.
Yes, I will say, from the sync agent perspective, and we are seeing more the uptick. They had the upfronts. We've got the fall season right around the corner. But taking us back to the time travel machine, Brian, if you will, because for a lot of our listeners listening to this podcast, there are a lot of musicians and some composers who didn't grow up with what we did with the traditional network television shows and the traditional model when the fall season would release new episodes to promote the new fleet of cars for the upcoming year.
Sure.
And now I want to spend some time, Brian, and turn the mic to you. If you could talk about the difference between subscription-based streaming models, i.e. Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, versus, say, Pluto and Tubi, which is free advertising-supported streamers. And if you could differentiate, what do the residuals look like for musicians if they secure a song in one of those shows?
Well, I mean, on the first hand, it can be complicated. I will say that residuals for anything streaming does not really translate to anything we know from the past of like network broadcast, right? So the interesting thing about streaming for all of these, so I'm going to lump them all into one group, is that network broadcast is based on market share. So the residuals paid for a certain market are kind of based on how large that market is. But you don't really, when an antenna is being beamed down from a mountaintop and you just assume Los Angeles is millions of potential eyeballs, you don't really know exactly how many eyeballs are watching, right? So these rates for things or for various cities are based on basically markets and market shares. When you get into the streaming world, whether it's subscription or ad-based, we know exactly how many are watching, right? They have data that shows that only 12,853 people actually watched that stream, and actually 4,281 of them clicked off after the first 60 seconds. So they have the data of exactly who's watching. So a lot of the streamers in general have argued, and I think rightfully so from a business perspective, we shouldn't be paying money out for people that only watched a minute. We shouldn't be paying out for people that only watched or didn't watch, frankly. We know exactly how many watched. So the rate that gets paid just in general by like ASCAP or BMI or all these other, entities that collect for us is generally calculated to be much lower. So that's where you get these per stream payouts that are like 0.00038 cents, right?
Yeah.
And then that adds up and you go, oh, look, 53,000 people watched my film on Amazon streaming last quarter, and that gave me $2.83. So that's how, whereas if that same film had premiered or played on, I don't know, TBS or TNT in a bunch of different markets where it's potentially millions of people, that's getting paid at a rate that the rate court sets that's based on a higher amount. So in general, streaming is much less because we have much more data on exactly who's watching and exactly who they're paying for, and they're not paying for anybody who's not watching. We're not going to make assumptions. We're going to go exactly what the numbers are. So just from a calculation standpoint, that's why streaming is so much lower, because we know exactly who's watching, right? So ad-based, subscription-based in general, a lot of that, from so we have to talk about, there's different kinds of royalties, of course. There's what would be a mechanical equivalent, like if you were to sell, I don't know, CDs and you get royalties per CD sold, that's kind of like streams sold, right? That's like streams watched, whatever. There's a royalty there that is going to the copyright owner of the material. But there's also composers and songwriters have this royalty for public performance that is paid by the broadcaster. In this case, the broadcasters would be the Netflix, the Hulu's, the Amazon Prime, whatever it is, and they're paying a royalty out to the song. So there's actually a couple different things paid and being collected, and ASCAP BMI are what they can charge and collect is actually based on a rate court, because they are under a consent decree by the United States government rate court. There are other entities like CSAC who, even though they've been around for an awful long time, they were not part of that consent decree, because they weren't, when that all happened, they weren't the big behemoth in the room. They were just kind of a small little entity. And so ASCAP and BMI, because they were in effect a monopoly of sorts, got caught up in this rate court system determining what they can charge for songwriters and royalties. CSAC does not have that. There's now another public performance royalty, like Global Rights Management, I believe it is, and they are also not under that consent decree, so they can negotiate rights with entities at maybe a higher rate, whereas ASCAP or BMI are stuck collecting what the rate court can tells them to collect.
I see.
So now what they distribute to their people can be an internal calculation based, they have scale that are not publicly available. They don't tell us how they calculate what we get at the end of the day. But if you're Beyonce, you're probably getting a different rate because of how much that is than if you're a Brian Ralston, right? So it's and again, those rates change based on how it's used. Is this a radio song? Is this on Pandora Radio? Is this in a film or TV audiovisual product? So there's rates for all these different things. Whether something is subscription based or ad based from a BMI or ASCAP perspective is not going to change that. That is a royalty paid to the songwriters for the intellectual property of what they're entitled to. It's kind of almost based on copyright law. But then you get into the mechanical of the audio recording, which has its own copyright.
Yes.
And that is streaming that audio recording is kind of like, basically, I'm going to call that, maybe wrong, right? The mechanical of what's being collected. And so when Spotify says we pay more royalties to songwriter, blah, 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 they're paying on the mechanical of the ownership of that recording. They're not really paying all of that money out to ASCAP BMI, to the writers of the intellectual property. So the mechanical of that recording is kind of a different pool of payments,
right?
That's not going to the creators of the intellectual property capsuled in that recording.
Okay. Yes.
So there, again, I mean, it's a loaded question. I'm giving you a broad answer of probably unfocused for your podcast listeners, watchers, that it's complicated.
Yes.
And some of what gets paid is determined by a rate court, ASCAP or BMI, royalty. CSAC, similar royalty, but they get to negotiate their own rates, GRM as well. And then there's this mechanical thing, which is also, a lot of that's based on licensing and what the deal is. And so there's not an easy way to answer.
Yeah, no. And you've left a good trail to follow, because my lead up second question is from the musician or composer side of things. Based on what you said, Brian, if there are less eyeballs now on traditional network shows, obviously safe to say that's going to be reflected in the cue sheet. So if say Blue Buddha represented you. We got a sync in Chicago Fire.
Yeah.
It airs on NBC, and maybe it's on Peacock. So compared to 10, 15, 20, say 15 years ago, when you could only watch that show on NBC television, is it a correct assumption to say that if it's airing globally, worldwide, you add up all those countries and you're earning a performance income from traditional television network, your royalty income was higher back then because all
Correct.
the eyeballs, correct, right? And now
Correct.
it's spread out everywhere between streaming and Tubi and Pluto.
Correct. And it's a more accurate representation of who's watching. So those rates aren't being collected, or I should say paid out, based on markets they're in, but based on actually eyeballs that are watching from the actual streaming data. It's like, I mean, some call some of this micro licensing. I mean, some of that refers to, if they only listen to 30 seconds of your 3-minute song, I want to only license the 30 seconds of it. I don't want to have to license the whole 3-minute song for what someone listened. I mean, I'm conflating two things a little bit, but at the same time, they're only paying for what is being watched. They're not paying for potential watches, right?
Yes.
And so the old traditional terrestrial radio or terrestrial television model is not the same as streaming in that regard.
100%. And that sets it up nicely, Brian, because from all the data that I'm seeing, with divided attention, I think as someone said, the amount of time spent on TikTok and the social media platforms, about 90 minutes per day. And if you take up the balance of time, folks aren't as engaged on watching traditional shows. I mean, what are you seeing as a film producer when you look at, if you release something, say you produce a film, you release it direct to Tubi, and your return on investment in this climate. And I know you did a great hour interview on California Insider, and I don't want to repeat that podcast that you did, but if you could dovetail some of the challenges that you're seeing in Hollywood with respect to producing films and the nature of the industry now.
So another rabbit hole. I think we actually, I said a little bit of this on California Insider, but I think it's worth repeating. Decades ago, when Blockbuster Video went out of business, okay, the home video market completely changed. So they used to have a market where they would sell to Blockbuster a VHS rental tape, and then became a DVD rental disc, and they would sell that to Blockbuster for $7,500 a piece. I mean, I'm making up the number, but it's not that far off. Okay. And Blockbuster would stack their shelves with it and then rent that out. And there was this rental window where it brought in money to the production companies, the studios, all that stuff, a huge amount of money. And then it would hit HBO or some other market. But there's this rental window. Yeah. When Blockbuster went out of business, Hollywood Video went out of business, that model changed to have streaming take over. Netflix became like the transition there, because remember, they were originally sending out discs to people in sleeves, right? It's like you don't have to go to the store anymore, but you're still renting a physical disc, right? Yeah. When that fell out, there was a hole that the production companies had of income, and that income over the life of that film actually made up for a significant part of paying for that film. So you would, let's just make up a number that's relatively easy. You would have a $50 million film, and it would make 20 or 30 million at the box office. And you would have this rental window that would kind of make up almost the rest of that 50 million. And then once it hit home video or licensing the TV or whatever, all of a sudden they're kind of in profit a little bit. Remove that rental window, and now all of a sudden they have to make up profit that they're not making up anymore. So that changed the kind of content that Hollywood makes. So they started they started the plan of, we're going to theatrically release movies in other markets. So instead of just release in the United States and the UK and the bigger markets, and then the rest of the world got it on disc or
Mhm.
rental or home video. They're like, we're going to do theatrical releases now in China. We're going to do theatrical releases now in India. We're going to do theatrical. And that release worldwide increased box office numbers,
Mm.
which helped offset, the loss of home video.
Yeah.
But every movie that the United States makes doesn't necessarily play well across every culture. If we're doing Dances with Wolves and these are like Americana stories and
Mhm.
drama stories that rely on a lot of dialogue to understand what's going on. So, this is not the only reason why superhero movies have taken off, but they play really well to international audiences because the branding is there internationally already from a game or a action figure or a comic book. And there are these long action scenes, chase scenes of 15 minutes where there's no dialogue, right?
Mm.
You kind of understand what's going on cross culturally. So
Yeah.
they make these action movies, these chase movies, and this could even be a James Bond thing or whatever, but there's a lot of action, a lot of chase, a lot of superhero, a
Mhm.
lot of things that get released now, and they're very expensive to make. So you have this middle of the road $50 million Pleasantville, $80 million Pleasantville, whatever, that doesn't play the same as it used to in
Mm.
other countries, other cultures.
Mm.
So now you see the middle budgeted movie, and I say middle like 50 million, $60 million movie,
Mhm.
kind of not be made anymore. So they're making these $100 million tentpole action movies with branded properties, play well culturally across every, of course they have to do other language dubs of them, but it's, you don't have to understand the language really to understand what's going on quickly, right?
Yes.
And then you have micro budget movies, which like Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity kind of prove to Hollywood that you can make a $100,000 movie or a less than $1 million movie. And every now and then you get a $300 million hit. Like it's like the Wonka ticket of
Right.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
And so now you have micro budget and you have $100 million budget and the middle of the road thing that the bread and butter of Hollywood, like that's what most people survived on,
Mm. Mhm.
all across all crews and everything, is not being made anymore, right?
Mm.
So now it's like feast or famine. So
Yeah.
Hollywood, of course, those $100 million movies are going to be made by the top people with the best, the expensive actors and the top crews, and they're really expensive to make. And then you got the small micro budget movie that is this, the struggling filmmaker trying to make a hit, and they might come up with a horror movie like The Terrifier or something that like happens to hit, but there's 10 others that don't.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how that has propagated out has really been a product, I think, of the loss of the home video market. And that's
Mm.
changed what Hollywood makes and how it makes. So that's now kind of why we're where we are today in terms of what's getting made.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now add to what I just described to you with a couple strikes that have happened in the past with
Yeah.
COVID and everything else, technology getting better.
Mhm. Mhm.
You don't have to physically be in Hollywood anymore to make product because you can have the same software on a setup at your home or in another state. You can produce music in Nashville that's just as broadcast quality as it was in Hollywood. So Hollywood is now spreading out, and it's really expensive to live in Los Angeles, as
Yes.
you know. Like it's a expensive city,
Mhm. Mhm.
and especially if you're a struggling filmmaker. And so a lot of people, while the offices and the decision makers and the corporate people are here, the creatives don't need to necessarily be here. So they're starting to now diversify. And I see Hollywood kind of diffusing out around the world a lot more.
Mhm.
And that is impacting the strength of Hollywood's unions, because the unions, I think, break down when you lose the monopoly of location.
Right.
And when movie making is going global, then the union jurisdiction stops outside the United States, right?
Correct.
So you add to that the tax credit incentives that's drawing productions, Eastern Europe, Europe in general. A lot of them are saying, we can do that. We want that. Well, how do we get Hollywood to come here to Slovenia?
Mhm.
Oh, let's offer a tax rebate, 25 cents, 25 cents on every dollar you spend in Slovenia. Just end the story. You get back into production and you
And
get it back
quicker.
quickly. Yeah.
Yes.
You get it back in 30 days and there's no hassle. There's no lottery like California has where you have to submit a lottery system and based on how many points you get, based on how many California jobs you're doing, you may or may not get the tax credit. So you can't really count on it until you get selected for it. Whereas Slovenia is like, there's no limit. Just come and whatever you spend here is fine. Now, they're not shooting, thousands of productions of Slovenia that way. They're trying to attract what they can.
Yeah.
And if California had an unlimited system, they would run out of money tomorrow. So I get both sides of that.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just like Slovenia. It's even other states. It's Nashville. It's Connecticut.
Yeah.
It's Georgia. It's are drawing productions away from Hollywood with tax credit incentives, and all of that is on top of everything else I've already said with technology allowing it, LA being expensive. Can't we do this somewhere else? And so it's just kind of almost been a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Where we are with technology, where the industry is with the home video market going away to streaming. And the music industry has had some of the same things because of, Napster leading to streaming music and leaving. It's like no one buys discs anymore. I do. I literally just bought this because it got re-released and it's on CD and I have to have it on CD, right? So I but I'm probably one of 12 people that will buy that. So
right.
Most people pay $10 a month and get unlimited music at their fingertips from whatever service they like. Right. And so the music industry has had to adapt in similar, even different ways. What used to be you would have an album, or you would go on tour and then you would create an album to like do that tour or promote. Like now you're like trying to promote the streaming or the album. Like it's reversed to what it used to be.
100%.
It's like now you're making money on the tour, not on the album.
Yeah.
And even on the tour, it's not really the ticket sales, the promoters getting all that. You're probably making money on the merch. You're probably making money on the t-shirts and all the other stuff you sell, which is like movie theaters. They don't make money on the tickets.
Right.
They make money on the popcorn
and the concessions. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the movies say, if you want to have this Avengers movie, the first 2 weeks, we get 100% of your ticket sales, and you can't, and name a movie that's in the theater for longer than 2 weeks. There's a few,
right,
but not many.
Not many.
So pretty much the only thing the theaters are making are popcorn and soda for money, because all the ticket sales are going to the studios if they even want it. So now our popcorn and soda, instead of $7, is $20.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we forced the movie theaters to upgrade the digital and then 3D, and that lasted for 3 years. And then like now it's 4K, and now it's all this Dolby Atmos. And each one of these theater upgrades is like, millions of dollars per theater, and they got to pay for that somehow. Wow. So the popcorn's now $25. So it's like, it's just this snowball effect that's crazy.
Do the math as you would say. And to your point, Brian, and then you see the element of pay for the high-end movie experience. You get alcohol, you get your meal, but then you're that's an experience, and you're paying $200 now maybe for the or more. Yeah,
you are. And how do they distinguish themselves? Because people have home video, surround sounds and Dolby Atmos replication in their home sometimes, right? With big screen TVs, and they can pause it and go to the bathroom and not have to miss anything. And I mean, I still think the theater experience, the collective experience of watching movies like a Mission Impossible movie with 100 people around you, I think there's something tangible that you can feel in the air with that I think is exciting. And I don't want to see that go away. Yeah. But theaters have to keep competing for something unique. What can you get here that you can't get at home? Right. And so now we're adding dine-in theaters and the trays and the feed food to your seat and like all these other things to try to say, come here, bring your family out, and this is something you can't replicate at home. But then it costs $200 to go to the movies.
And it's interesting, Brian, because if you look at back to your statement about tentpole films and Jack Black and Minecraft, I know they were $100,000 shy of topping $1 billion in box office sales Though I mean that led the summer, and I'm curious to see what the the release of the summer other blockbuster films and how they do. But to thread the needle, because this just came up in my feed. I don't know if you heard about it, Brian. Threading so Hollywood 2.0 going to Las Vegas for the Summerlin Studios, a 31-acre project backed by Sony and Warner Brothers. What I'm hearing is that the Nevada lawmakers rejected that proposal to give up the $95 million a year tax credit. So the bill passed the assembly, but didn't make it through the Senate. I don't know if you heard that, and what so that was an opportunity. Yeah.
I hadn't heard the result of whether it passed or not. I know that there was, there's plans on paper, there's 3D renderings, this is what we want to do. But that is honestly no different than attracting an individual film production to shoot in another country. It's the state or people pushing for this, wanting the state to give some sort of a tax rebate or tax incentive, and we'll bring production there. And then, if the state doesn't do it, they'll find another state that'll do it. Like they'll find somewhere. I think it wasn't Mark Wahlberg, like a big pusher of that in Vegas.
Yeah.
And stuff. So like, that's fine. That's great. People all have their angles of what they want to see where. It's Las Vegas, I think is, you can drive to LA relatively easily. So stars could still keep their homes here and drive out there to shoot a film, and they're not that far away. It's less than an hour flight. It's in their private jets or whatever it is.
Right.
So that makes sense. But I know I have a good sound designer friend who is working with a company out of, I want to say, Omaha, Nebraska, and they're building green stages in Omaha because the virtual the ability to shoot virtually, you can be anywhere in the world, right? So you can do a Hollywood production in Omaha, Nebraska, if it's all green stage, just like The Mandalorian for Disney. It's all pretty much all green stage.
Yeah.
And so why not go to Nebraska? So if Nebraska is going to pass a tax incentive to get you to shoot there, and the kind of shoot you would do there is, let's say, a green stage facility that's being built out, and they can get it for you cheaper than you could get a green stage here.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you go to Omaha, right? So, and it's Omaha. Like how Omaha probably never dreamed they could compete with Hollywood, but yet with technology, here they are.
Yes.
We build a green stage, and we're going to attract some production. And if we have a tax rebate, then the same thing. Nashville did something similar, a lot of it music related, but Universal is talking about building. They have the plans. I think everything's been approved. They're building a new scoring stage in Nashville. They're building post-production audio facilities in Nashville. The scoring stage there is going to be the size of the Sony scoring stage here in Los Angeles, which is huge. You could fit a full orchestra and a choir in there. And Nashville has tax incentives that they're doing. And one thing that was actually holding a lot of this up at the time was internet connectivity. Like the city didn't have fiber yet, and the city didn't have all this internet. And if they're going to attract work and need to do Hollywood level work, with the ability to remote into town and remote record and remote color grade and remote, all this stuff, they need fiber in the city. So the city now had to kind of side project into, we need to petition Google or someone to like bring fiber to our city.
Okay.
And they successfully did that. So now Nashville is like hooked up with the fastest of the fastest internet if you want it, if you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that means that now they can build, more infrastructure to allow remote work. For the people in Nashville, it's not remote, but for us, we could, I could remote record an orchestra there a lot easier now than I could before. They haven't built that stage yet, but it's on the plans. Yeah. So, I mean, everyone wants a piece of the Hollywood pie, and I say that symbolically, and they're able to do it. If you Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
So, I think Hollywood is diversifying. I think Hollywood is diffusing out around the world. And I think in some ways for artists like us, that can be exciting because maybe it doesn't mean we need to live in Los Angeles to do what we do. I will say this is still a business of relationships. Yes. Especially at the outset of one's career, you have to build relationships, and that's really hard to do remotely. Yeah. So if you already have an established relationship, you're getting work, people know who you are and have worked with you. Yeah, go live out on your ranch in Idaho and fly in when you need to and work remotely the rest of the time. But if you think you're going to break into Hollywood and create the relationships you need by never living here or never being here, it is still going to be an upward battle, because this is still a business of relationships. People tend to hire and work with and sync license people. Like, as a music supervisor, like, there's thousands of stuff come across your desk. What do you pick? Probably the stuff presented to you by people you trust. Probably
100%. And correct, Brian, until what you had eloquently stated in California Insider is until we see the day that the studio heads at the studios in Burbank, Culver City, Century City, if they're no longer going to the office there and it's no longer centralized there, that might change the tune of things potentially. But we're not there yet.
It might. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, this is probably more theme park related than our movie making music related, but like Disney was like going to move a bunch of executives to Florida, like Imagineering theme park people. But then, for politics and other stuff, they decided not to do that and keep them in LA. So, but the incentive to do that was financial. It was, we're not only going to centralize them all working someplace, but there were financial incentives to go do that. And then there were other incentives that came up that made them not want to. But I'm just saying, like, they will move their C-suites and their business if that makes financial sense to do that. Yes. Hollywood is not, us content creators may have some romantic, love affair with creating storytelling, all this other stuff, but the people paying for what we do, it's a money making business to them. And if it costs more to do something here, and they can do it just as effectively somewhere else, they will.
They will, 100%. And so, Brian, that is a great segue, because I'm sure we're all glued to our screens about 3 weeks ago when Google released the demo of VO3, and everyone's eyes dropped and mouths dropped at seeing what they could do with AI visuals and AI voiceover. But for now, correct, Brian, we're okay as far as if you want to talk about that which is generated via AI is not copyrightable. So therefore, that is, the studios can't use AI in that regard and completely replace humans just yet.
Correct. So there is a fine line here in the copyrightable, not copyrightable thing. But the Copyright Office has been pretty clear thus far. Copyright is for the protection of human generated content. So, but now we get into what is human generated, right? If I have copyright create a character design for me, and then I go in and recolor it something else, like, did I do enough human interaction to make it now human or human created or human eligible for copyright, right? Okay. So some of this actually goes back to, there was a famous photo not long ago of an orangutan or a monkey or something like that, where the photographer handed their camera to the primate. I'm not sure what species it was, sure. but and the primate literally took a picture of itself, and it was a selfie.
Okay.
And so, but then it's on the cameraman's camera. So he posted that online, and it's like, the orangutan selfie, like, how, and everybody was fascinated by it, because it's like a human behavior to maybe take a selfie, but yet here's this primate doing that. And then people took that image and started making t-shirts with it and started putting it on their web pages and doing all this stuff. And the photographer started going after them for copyright violation. That's my photo. You can't do that. Right. Well, it went to a court case. It basically said, no, it's not eligible for copyright, because that wasn't taken by you, the human photographer. That was taken by a non-human primate.
Yes.
And therefore, the picture is now public domain. And that was the ruling in the case, which, it's not where all this comes from, but it certainly solidifies that copyright is reserved for the protection of human creation, right? So if it's not human created, then it's not eligible for copyright. So now fast forward to artificial intelligence. What is a human creation? And I think the other thing about AI is people need to distinguish. There are AI tools, and there are AI that are assistive. There are AI tools that are generative. So all AI is not the same. If I use an AI algorithm to make a blurry image more sharp, or I use an AI algorithm to take a music mix and make it better or sound better or bring the drums out more in the music mix.
Mhm.
The action of making the drums come out more, or the action of making that photo less blurry, is not a copyrightable action anyway. Even if a human did it, you can't copyright a sharper image from a blurry one because you used a tool to make it sharper. Using AI in that way is what the Copyright Office would call a de minimis um, contribution of AI,
Okay.
meaning if a human did it, this thing that you're trying to copyright, if a human did it,
Mhm.
is it eligible for copyright because the human did it? And if the answer is no, then it's not, it's a fine use of AI. It's
Okay.
not a use that's copyright eligible either way, and then it doesn't matter. If what you're submitting for copyright is appreciative, meaning it appreciated the value of the thing, and it's generative, and if a human did that, a lyric, a
Mhm.
melody,
Mhm.
I will say like a design, like a piece of art, and a human did it, and it was eligible for copyright, but yet an AI did it, and now that means it's not eligible for copyright
I
because it
see.
wasn't done by a human. So they already have this definition. This is not me coming up with this. This de minimis and
Mhm.
appreciative definitions are already kind of out there, and
Mhm.
they're tested, and they've been ruled upon in various cases of what's eligible for copyright. The problem
Sure.
is
Mhm.
when you submit your copyright application, they ask you a question. What is AI? Did this use AI? And what did you do with it with
Mm.
AI?
Mhm.
And is this de minimis or appreciative? Is this eligible? And it's purely on your honor right now.
I see. Okay.
So I could create a lyric that would be copyrightable that an AI generated for me. And what if I change one word of that line of lyric?
Mm.
What if it said, roses are red, violets are blue, and I changed the line to say roses are red, violets are pink? Does now that line that AI created for me is that human created because I changed one thing about it? That's where we start to get fuzzy into what
Yes.
is a human generation or AI generation, and is it still eligible? My personal opinion
Mhm.
is the way to fight AI is to really push for all of us to push legislators when we talk about this, write letters, whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
push your organizations. We really need to define and solidify that copyright should be left for human generated material.
Mhm.
There's already been rulings to say that a text prompt is not enough of human input to guarantee eligibility. So me saying create scary music with low woodwinds, in a minor key that
Mhm.
lasts for 30 seconds, go. That's not writing music.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
describing music, and then music pops out and it's generative, and it'll do 20 versions of that, and then I like that, and I go, oh
Mhm.
great, I'll put that under my scene.
Mm.
That music is not copyright eligible. I'm not saying it's not music. I'm not saying it's not valued to the scene,
Mm.
but
Mhm.
you just created essentially public domain material.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So I think the more we can do as creators to fight AI through copyright by demanding that copyright be eligible only for human creation, by pressing legislators to pass laws to further define what that means.
Mm.
I think we could also pass, there should be laws, in my opinion, my personal opinion,
Mhm.
to that the AI algorithm tech companies that create this, there is a way to watermark output with information of how it was created. So, you can go right now on ChatGPT and say, like, did you create this and
Mm.
when? And it should have a record of when it did. So, like every piece of art or music or whatever in the metadata of the digital file that it did, kind of like a blockchainy like thing or something, there should be something embedded that says this was created with Sumo AI on this date and this thing,
Right.
with that information. Therefore, with AI, even though, or with copyright, even with there's a on your honor system of answering these questions of what you used,
Mhm.
we could also ask, what did you use? What algorithm did you use?
Okay.
And all this is like, an on your oath thing. So if there was a lawsuit down the road that came up because of your copyright, and you attested on the registration form that you didn't use anything AI, but it comes out from the watermark in the case that you did, you lied on your form, you're going to
Right.
lose the suit because you're going to lose your AI registration or your copyright registration. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there are ways to actually solve this through copyright. And and then we haven't even gotten into the fact that AI is not, in my opinion, is not really kind of creating new. It is
Correct.
replicating
Yes.
patterns,
Yes.
right? There's a big study. I just saw this in my feed. There's a big study that Apple did about AI and what is it doing. And they set a bunch of tests for AI to complete. And they designed these tests easy, medium, and hard based on the amount of reasoning that would have to happen to solve the test or solve the puzzle. And on the easy stuff, it did it. On the medium stuff, it was harder. On the hard
Mm.
stuff that a human could reason and infer some things from, it completely broke down and couldn't pass,
Okay.
couldn't solve the problem. Why is that? Because AI is just replicating patterns.
Mm.
Now, humans, I could say I'm influenced by, name your artist here. I'm influenced by John Williams when I write a score, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to probably listen to what that is, listen to how he orchestrates woodwinds, and replicate that in some of my work, right? Is that really what AI is doing? It's listening to patterns, it's replicating something in that work. So you can absolutely create something that sounds similar as a human
Right.
and as an AI that are both following patterns. Is AI is really just, it's not reasoning or solving. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say the same thing with us creating content. Let's limit it to music now.
Mm.
Creating music. The music is an expression. It's usually an expression of a human experience. It's expression of an emotion. It's an expression, an artist's expression of something, right? It's a
Mm.
character in the film that if we're creating an original score. And an AI algorithm is not expressing anything.
Correct.
It's pattern replication.
Yes.
And so that's to me the distinction. Does that matter if you're putting music under a YouTube video for your social media channel? Probably not. So I think a lot of AI music library stuff that is destined for that commodity use of music where it's just, I need 30 seconds of something, some beat under my social media thing to get people to
Right.
watch. That's going to probably be the first big use of AI generated music library, let's say music.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think you get into movies and you get into original scores. Sure, you will have some young filmmakers use AI for underscoring scenes and underscoring things because there's a financial component to that that's easy and cheap.
Yes.
But I think at the end of the day, the true people making the craft of what we do, that's not what we're doing, right? You're
Correct.
creating a character that is music and that is an emotion and expression, and there is a subjective choice there. And
Mm.
what you're really doing is hiring that artist, composer, to put their artistic influence there and to express something and to create something new. It's the
Yeah.
reasoning part of that AI test that the AI can't do. And so we certainly, I think, have a place for a long time in this, but there will be people replaced by
Mm-hmm.
AI, and
Mm.
that's probably the commodity music or the commodity use of music
Yeah.
library. It's the people that don't care about what it is; they just need something, and it's cheap, and it's
Correct.
under my pharmaceutical commercial or whatever it is,
Right. 100%.
right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I could talk about this all day, but
No, and Brian, this thank you because it's something that which is a great segue. You teach a UCLA extension course that I know it's about to start, and I can share it on the screen. Correct? It's the business of film music,
yes,
and tell us more about and correct. I believe you had created this. You've been teaching for a decade. Is that correct?
I've actually been teaching there about 15, almost 15 years, maybe
Wow.
it's 14. I didn't always teach this class. When I first started, I taught, their MIDI class, and I've taught, they had a digital performer class that I taught once, and they don't offer that anymore.
Okay.
We have, they've evolved their curriculum over time. And there's this class that a lot of these education programs, they teach, writing for strings, writing for animation, and they don't get into the business side of what we do.
Mhm.
And that is hugely important. I see that composing and music creation is more entrepreneurial than ever.
Mm. Mhm.
And You're not going to be an expert coming out of this class in the business side, but I guarantee you would, be introduced to stuff and be forced to think about stuff a little differently than you ever have before. So at least when you come across that contract, you start working with a publicist,
Yes.
you want to get an agent, you're going to know what they do, you're going to know how to interact with them, and hopefully I can introduce those concepts throughout. So I like to say we talk about everything but the notes.
I see. Interesting. Okay.
So,
Uh-huh.
I will talk about a little bit, depending on the day or the lecture, on LLC formation. We'll talk a little bit about taxes. We'll talk about working with a publicist, working with an agent. I bring in guests almost every class, and those guests are usually not other composers, although I will bring in other composers too. I think it's important to learn from people who have been successful, sure. But
Yes.
I want the composers to hear, young composers that take my class, to hear about, to hear from a lawyer, to have a lawyer come in and talk with them, to have
Mhm.
an agent come in and talk with them, to have a film director come in and talk about what they're looking for when they hire a composer, or what they're looking for when they're trying to find a song to place in their movie or TV.
Mm.
So we talk about all these other things.
Mhm.
The assignments that I give them are not music creation assignments. They are more like, let's put a budget together for an orchestra, write an essay on, some aspect of the industry that, the importance of branding in, your product, we were in a very male dominated industry for film composers. So it's like,
Mhm.
write about, some women's contribution to the film composer industry, and all, like, we will come up with other things other than score this scene. That's,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
as a result, people have taken the course that are not composers. There's music supervisor people. There's a music business program that's not the film scoring certificate program at UCLA.
Mhm.
And some people, as an elective, have come over and taken my class as well, because it's just another introduction into kind of the business side of the world that we composers deal with. So, and
Yeah.
I think being, now that I'm getting into producing as well, I see the other side of the budget argument,
Mhm. Mhm.
and why things are the way they are. And I strongly push all of my students to start thinking of themselves more as a filmmaker than a composer. You
Yes.
are a filmmaker and a storyteller first and foremost, who happens to know the language of music to help tell that story. So there's a very big difference between the music industry songwriters and composers
Mm.
and the film industry composers. Music industry, you're doing your album, you're creating your song, you're creating it really for yourself for the most part.
Yeah.
You could be commissioned to write a song for someone, but like, for the most part, you are fulfilling an artistic expression for your album, for a song you have in your head.
Yes.
Film music is all collaboration. You are writing someone else's vision, but you are the one that has the music skill set to do it.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
going to go through a lot of revisions. You're going to write 60 versions of
Mhm.
that theme, and
Mhm.
you're going to have to do it with a smile. And you're going to have to throw out the stuff you love because the director likes the stuff that you hated. There's
Yeah.
a lot of that.
Yeah.
And so if film composers, I think the best film composers are usually filmmakers themselves, and they understand the language of film.
Mm.
So I encourage all my students always to kind of start thinking more like a filmmaker, start thinking more of a storyteller. I want you to understand how to read a script and what is a character arc, and
Mm.
how do you fit in with that. And and then also there's the business side, like I said.
Yeah.
you know okay, great, we can do a score. If we had unlimited John Williams money, we could hire 100 people in a room and you could
Right.
write to your heart's content. But guess what? This independent film has $10,000 for you only to
Mhm.
create what you need. So you're going to be limited to, five people,
Yes.
five musicians that you can throw together with your MIDI
Right.
and create something just as effective for that movie. So there's a
Mm.
business
Mhm.
aspect of producing that score
Mhm.
that you're going to have limitations. And how do you be just as effective doing that on a budget?
I love the fact, Brian, that you also include, information about registering your song with the PROs, because that, working with independent artists, I've recently, as a sync agent, have expanded to helping artists administer their publishing, because so many artists, once they secure that sync, they're, they're leaving money on the table, not collecting
Sure.
worldwide out the source. And I'm sure with composers, is that a similar sentiment? I mean, if they're not well versed on collecting the royalties, they may be leaving money on the table.
Absolutely. I mean, the money's being paid by the
Mm.
broadcasters, whether it's being collected by someone or not, right? So,
Yeah.
and I encourage even the young filmmaker or young composers to, even if it's a short film, right, register a cue sheet for it, right?
Mm.
So, because you never know. I mean, there are contents where short films get broadcast. Probably not, but you never know. And start getting in the habit of building a little catalog of your work on the ASCAP BMI database, CSAC, whatever it is that you belong to.
Yeah.
And absolutely, you should have a publishing company, that's on paper, of course, that you can reroute that to your own bank account from a business standpoint if you need to, but have a publishing entity and have you as a writer represented by one of the PROs so that you can begin to collect.
Yeah.
And maybe you will, maybe you won't, depending on what kind of work you're doing. You're only collecting on broadcasted work, public broadcast work. So home video in the United States doesn't pay this through ASCAP or BMI. It has to be broadcast on a public airwave, or this is kind of where streaming gets in, where we could get into the legal weeds of it, but I think it would be boring. But streaming is not really a public broadcast.
Right.
Streaming is a private performance from server to your, direct TV receiver or to your computer. It's a IP address to IP address performance. So it's not public.
Okay.
So there is a legitimate legal argument, if you want to get down to the technical aspects of it, that streaming is actually not a public performance. So is it due a royalty or not? I don't know. They're paying royalties on it because of precedent and because TV watching has kind of taken over this, the streaming technical stuff. But really, I see the argument that that's not a public performance anymore. It's not a public airwave, right?
Yeah.
So, and there was move not long ago to create all the internet providers as public utilities, to define them as public utilities.
Okay.
So there's a right to access or whatever. And there's a side of politics that wants that and another side of politics that doesn't want that regulation. If they were declared a public utility, it would be a public airwave, and that would probably help the royalty market. But they're not currently.
Okay.
They're private entities. And so you've got private entities serving, and just because Netflix is streaming, a Mission Impossible movie to 1 million people, they're doing it. They're not broadcasting it from an antenna to a market of 1 million people that could just pick it up on a public airwave that's controlled. They're broadcasting it individually from their server to your IP address. That's one stream. They're just doing one stream 1 million times.
I see.
So it's actually a private performance.
Okay.
And to my students at UCLA, I usually start by saying this.
Yeah.
I say, okay, we can create digital copies of movies like on our iTunes library, or Plex is another thing where you can like have a local copy in your house. So let's say you have a computer and you have a server sitting next to it, like a hard drive. Okay. That hosts all of your movies. Is that public or private?
Wow.
Private. It's sitting next to you.
It's yes. Right.
It's running through your router or connected directly or whatever. It's private. Well, what if I move that server away from my room here and I put it out in my garage, a detached garage, and there's an Ethernet cable connecting it? Is it public or private?
It's in your garage. I would say it's still on your property, so I would say private.
It's private. Okay.
Yeah.
What if I rent cloud space? What if I rent Amazon space and I say I'm going to have my file and I'm going to upload them to cloud computing? It's someone else's computer, right? But it's a cloud computer that I rent space at a server in Dallas, Texas, and I upload my files to that, and then I stream them to my, they're my files, my rented server space that I'm renting, and I stream it from that server wherever it's hosted to my house, public or private.
I'm going to still go with private there.
Private, okay.
Yeah.
So what if I don't own the files, but I ask Netflix to host the files and I rent the watching of those files, and Netflix is hosting them on their server wherever they are? Public or private?
Private.
It's private because I have an individual account, and they have the files there, and I'm renting access to them for. How is that different from a subscription model? It's what Netflix subscription is.
That's yeah.
So it's a private performance. So if we as composers survive and live off of our BMI or ASCAP royalties because of public performance stuff that gets generated over time. And public performance is going away in the world of streaming. It's all becoming little micro private performances. What does that say to the future of streaming world? Now, we're at a point where ASCAP or BMI are paying streaming royalties. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they don't, and I'm not saying that they won't continue. There's a little bit of a precedent. We've convinced the markets to kind of do this.
Yes.
So good for us. But if someone really wanted to push this in a court of law, they're going to get into the weeds of all the technical aspects of it's public or private. And kind of the technical is not on our side in a little bit. So in a way, I have to tell composers, like, you accepting $1,000 to score that film because it's going to play on, Sci-Fi Channel for the next 10 years and make you $8,000 or $9,000 over 10 years. Those days could be going away, which means now what you get up front might end up being all that you can count on.
Right.
Which now might change your opinion on what that license fee for that song should be, or what that rate you get for scoring that film should be. Because what you get up front, you might get something on the back end. That would be great, icing on the cake. But what you get up front is the only thing you can count on getting, because the public performance royalty stuff is, changing and maybe going away over time.
Correct.
Not tomorrow, but over time.
Yes. Now, Brian, because that's a great question. So if you're a composer, you create a piece of work that's used in a film, and then say that it appears on the film soundtrack. Does the studio own the master recording because the composer, it's a work for hire?
It's going to depend on what the agreement is.
I see.
The overwhelming majority of agreements in film and TV it's a work for hire agreement. A work for hire agreement, essentially what you're doing is you're being subcontracted to create content, but they will own the content, the intellectual property of the content. They own the control of it. They own everything. So every agreement is different. I have done work for hire agreements that restipulate that I own the intellectual property of what I create, but I do not own the master recording of what I create. So if I wanted to take my film score suite for, say, the film Crooked Arrows that I scored, I actually own the IP of that score. I could, on my own dime, go re-record it somewhere, do my own concert suite of it, create my own secondary album of it, of whatever I want, and that's fine. But the actual recordings that were in the movie were paid for by the production company, and I can't just reuse those, right? But that's, again, that's not common. That's kind of what that agreement says I could do. The higher up your production, if you're scoring a Marvel movie, you probably don't have any say.
Right.
They're going to own the IP. They're going to own the recording. They're going to own everything else. But then again, you're not getting paid $5,000 to score a Marvel movie. You're getting paid kind of more appropriately up front for that. In a work for hire agreement, you usually negotiate back in the same contract the writer credit, music by Danny Elfman, or whatever it is, and you negotiate back the writer's share of that BMI ASCAP CSAC royalty. So you would still collect that as part of that original agreement, but you don't own the IP. You don't own the copyright.
Correct.
So it all depends on the agreement. When you're working on an independent film, you have a little bit more leverage to say, look, you're paying me $38 to score your short film. Okay, fine. Let's turn that $38 into a license fee on paper. I will own the copyright of the music, the publishing, the master recordings. I will own everything. Your $38 will be the license fee for you to use it in your film in perpetuity. And then you own it. So on that little independent film, maybe you can now actually own everything.
Yeah.
And I have films that I've worked on where I've done that too. So it's always back to what the agreement is. 95% of the agreements in Hollywood are work for hire. They own it. You don't.
Yes. Yeah. This could be a part 2 conversation, but it's almost back to what you were saying as
it could be like a whole class at a university or something.
100%. But back to strategy, like you were saying, and we'll wrap with this, Ryan. But in the day and age of touring, merch, how do you release a track? I don't know if you knew this, but I'm pulling up Jack Black's. He had the song called Steve's Lava Chicken song from Minecraft. It charted on Billboard, and it's like a 30-second song from the film. It went viral. Everyone took it, made it a clip, and I looked up the writer credit, and shrewd as he is, Jack Black's, he's a writer on that track.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So
he's
strategy.
he's a member of the Society of Composers and Lyricists. I actually got to meet him at one of our events, and great guy. So.
Yeah. And then going back to my EMI Capitol Records days, and then Tenacious D, the band he's in.
Mhm.
But no, this is we're like I said, it's like an onion with 50 million layers that we can peel back. And I really appreciate, Brian, because you covered a good cross section of information, and I'll share the links to your course. It's starting later this June, correct?
Correct. The last Tuesday in June, we start up for the summer quarter. The one good thing is that anyone can take that class. You don't have to be in the film scoring program to take it. Like I said, there's some in the music business program that take it like an elective, but individuals could take that class kind of a la carte. UCLA Extension is not UCLA. So they share some higher level administrative stuff. They share facility, they share policies, but it is truly run like an adult school or trade school. It is 100% tuition funded. They get no state funds, and people could kind of just sign up for classes. So they have a Pro Tools class. Like if some music people want to take Pro Tools and get that, you could just take the Pro Tools class and that's it. You're not like in the program long term.
Right.
Same thing with this class. Most of them also are done either on evenings or weekends, and that's on purpose so that people can have a job, people can have even other regular school programs and be able to kind of fit this in the evenings around that life, right? And so a lot of that's on purpose. And I occasionally do have people that are not composers that just want to learn about more of this stuff that do take it. So that's great.
I'll share so it's like June 24th to September 2nd, Tuesdays from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. So it looks like 11-week course.
It's 11-week course.
11 course. Nice.
And basically end of June through Labor Day, basically.
Very nice. And then, so this summer, and then for 2026, it'll come back. We don't too far to predict. It'll come back in the summer usually again.
Right now, it is a once a year summer course.
Okay.
It used to be a twice a year fall spring course, and COVID kind of shifted like how many people were in the program and how many times they were going to offer stuff. And so they shifted it to be a summer one time only. I absolutely believe and have been told, if demand raises for it, it may go back to a fall spring twice a year course. But right now, as they ramp back up from years and years of COVID and students not being here and going home overseas, and because it is an in-person class, it's not an online class. They will, it's one time a year right now. Okay. It is a required course in the film scoring program. And then, if there's demand for it, because they don't like having more than 20 people in the class. And I think right now we have like 10 signed up so far, although it's still a little early. Usually there's a rush right at the end for signups. So it's a good size. And if they have more demand, they will open up another version of it. But we haven't yet had to, because since COVID, it's been a little weird.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Well, very nice. I'll be sure to share the links. And Brian, thank you so much. LA-based film composer and film producer Brian Ralston, thanks so much for joining us, and really enjoyed our chat.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And I just, I tell people the one last thing: start thinking entrepreneurial. You are your own business, your own brand, and you have to kind of think how you fit in with that. You're not being hired for your music. You're being hired for you, the artist that you are, the content you create. So start getting into that entrepreneurial mind.
You took the words out of my mouth, because usually I end with that question of what's one piece of advice you'd have for our listeners. And I'm remiss because I didn't ask that, but somehow through mental telepathy, you hit it on the nose. So we'll be sure to link through. If folks want to get in touch with you through your website, is a great way to connect.
That's a great way to connect. My BrianRalston.com and all the social medias are pretty much Brian Ralston. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Very nice. Very cool. Well, with that, we'll catch you on the next episode of Sync Riffs. And until then, namaste.
Go.